Hi everyone, welcome to another discussion episode for Ships of Merior by Jani Wet. It's the second book in the Wars of Light and Shadow series. We are reading these books about 4 chapters at a time every 2 weeks and discussing them every 2 weeks on Sundays. To meet up, we post them later in the week. Today we're discussing the final 2 chapters of the book, chapters 13 and 14, I believe. And with me, I have three wonderful guests. Chibipo, would you like to start us off with introductions?
Of course. Chibi Po, also Chibi Po on Twitter, and just a longtime reader of the series and her other books, and then just fantasy in general after that. So.
Jared from the Fantasy Thinker YouTube, and I just finished Ships of Merior for the first time, and it was outstanding.
Nice.
My name's Chris Moen, sometimes YouTuber, sometimes appear on lovely chats like this on other people's channels, which is honestly better than being on YouTube itself. And also first-time reader of this series, and a surprising ending to the series, I think, would be fair to say. It was not the ending that I was expecting.
So, as a confession, I have not read the last 10 pages because I've been jet lagged this week from traveling. So I was really last minute on my catching up of the reading. So Chris and Jared and GB Po will tell us what happened in the ending.
Well, I think it's interesting because I think you did get the ending. If you know what I mean, you got the ending or the climax of the book, and I think the last part, the reckoning, is very much about the aftermath of that. You know, kind of what Lysair takes from all of those the episodes and kind of what things are led to him, which I think is sort of like a reflective ending rather than the kind of like bombastic murder and you know fallout of maybe the first book of Curse of the Mysteryth, which was very much dynamic,
And I think it also kind of leads us into the next book a little bit, So it's it was. I loved the ending. I thought it was great. But it started with Lysaea's like march across the continent,
right.
and that was kind of cool because it really detailed like some of the brutality of the guerrilla warfare,
Right.
and it kind of reminded me because it was a clansman that are loyal to Arathon, and that brought to mind. I remember when Janie was talking to us about the Battle of Culloden and how that influenced her into starting to think about this series, and that those guerrilla tactics they were using along his march kind of put me in that frame of mind of them marching across this area that might kind of resemble that kind of warfare there. And so I thought that was pretty cool because those clansmen, they were like very effective in places in placing seeds of discontent and doubt into the minds of the troops and stuff like that. But of course, Lysaea has a very strong charisma, and he's able to eventually get them there where they're going.
I hadn't really thought about that, Jared, actually, about the Battle of Culloden, but you're absolutely all right. It was this kind of part where they got into the past that they knew was going to be fraught. It's not that it caught them by surprise. They knew this was going to be the dodgy part of the journey, but that actually what happened in the end is they get kind of stuck between going forward and going back. And so they just stood very much where they were in one place until an event kind of broke that kind of stalemate for them.
They knew about it, but I don't think they took it as seriously at first. And I know Lysaea's captains there, I forget their names, but they were more worried about it than Lysaea was at first, I think. And then, or the troops, the troops,
The troops were kind of riding high on the, we have 30,000 plus, people. There's nothing, no way that we can possibly lose. While, Pesquille's like, we're a giant walking target.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That Pesquel, that was his name. Yeah. And yeah, didn't he ended up not making it, right?
Yeah. Formerly of the parish, Mr. Pesquel. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting, just all the factors that led up to that, because it's like he doesn't make it, but it kind of underlines, if I remember correctly, it's mentioned somewhere, maybe in this book, maybe in the last one, where Pesquil's lost someone when he was very young to the feuding between the
clans,
clans and the townsfolk. And so on a personal motivation, he's just out for revenge on that, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right.
I think that's him. It could have been someone else, but he's so he's so devoted to it in this whole cycle that there's no stepping back to realize it's like, okay, but they died, whoever was important to me or whatever died because of this whole feud. And he's just like, revenge begets revenge begets revenge, so he goes and on a lifelong campaign of slaughtering these people, and kills kills and does some pretty horrific stuff too, or orders it, as we saw in the climax of Curse of the Mist Wraith. And
yeah, that's right.
And in turn, that sows the seeds for someone to launch their bow and put him down, also for revenge.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
Yeah.
That the way that's written though is like super cool, right? Using the afterthoughts, and then the afterthoughts lead straight into the next section. I just thought that was kind of so cool, because initially I kind of thought, oh, we're going to get the afterthoughts, and we wouldn't get to see that for another 50 pages or something. What happened there? And it was like,
right into it. It's like, this last, and I think it was even the last one of the triplet. So it's like, it just flows so nice.
Oh yeah,
right. Yeah, that was well done.
So satisfying.
But also, it was like, you can lay the fault for his death. Not just, I mean, Jarrett launched the arrow, but you really got to say Lazaire was a big contributor to that. Just because he had his, there's that point where he gets his pride irritated by, Pesquil mocking him, and he's like, yeah, so I'm going to ride with our weakest company. And now,
right.
He got Pesquil, overworked, trying to, safeguard this entire caravan, that's impossibly large, against a small mobile force that, can duck in and out. And they've got all the space around them to hide in. So it's like, wow, you just contributed to the stress for him there, buddy.
Yeah.
I thought that was a planned sound effect,
And it wasn't that I felt that bad for Pesquel, but because he wasn't the greatest person in his own right, but yeah, that was a really, like Chris, you said, it was really cool how she wrote that in there, and how she included that in the little blurbs there. I like that a lot.
Yeah, but it did speak to kind of Lysair kind of having that feeling, just like everybody else in the company, that they couldn't be beaten. They had this unstoppable force, and all they had to do was just get there. As long as they get there, the kind of Arathon would be killed, and then that would be wiped out, and that was just that. So his kind of his bravado and saying, look, I don't even need to be here. I don't even need to be as a spearhead or a figurehead. If I just go with the weakest people that we have, sure, everything will be okay anyway. It's more, this is preparing us for the real battle that's coming ahead, and totally underestimating what Jarrett could do.
Yeah, it speaks to his kind of pig-headed motivations of what do they call that? Tunnel vision, you know?
Yeah, it's like,
Um,
I am righteous, and righteousness will prevail.
yeah,
Mm.
exactly.
It feels like they were very well prepared, right? We get a lot of like the army is this well-oiled machine that's been training at Avenor, is it? Um, and it. I think for a while there, I thought that they were going to be undefeated or whatever, but I think Arathon's points about how he can cause the army to fail, that made a lot of sense. They're such a big moving target that yeah, small things can completely destroy them, which maybe Lysa should have thought about in retrospect. Is that what he thinks about in Reckoning? Which chapter I did not read. Um, Speaking of so Pesquil's death, yeah, what you said, Jared, about yeah, he wasn't my favorite person. I did not like him at all. In fact, he might be the person I dislike most in the book so far. But I somehow still felt sad at his death, which was interesting. The way that was written to sort of evoke those emotions in me, I thought that was very interesting. And also when he dies, I think he thinks of Jared as a worthy enemy, that he died in the hands of a worthy enemy. That also was interesting. So it felt almost like it was a bit of a game for him, the head hunting, and yeah, he's dead now, and it's unfortunate, but it was at the hands of a worthy enemy. So yeah, um,
Yeah, it gives you, it just shows what a well-rounded characterization
mhm.
that
Yeah,
Janie gave
exactly.
us. But
Yeah, and like I said, I agree. I didn't really feel sorry, or all that sad about him. But I still kind of, just because it's he's clearly competent, and really good at what he does, and it's just he's applying his competence, all that skill and everything to some pretty terrible ends.
yeah,
And you just think in the larger picture, it's like this is just such a waste,
Mm.
because this entire um, what's it say on the little roadmap that Jenny's got? What is any war but the complete absence of hope or whatever? It's like these people have just they're all just so tangled up in this feud and this violence, and that's all they know. And it's like, so it's just kind of sad, because it's like, what could he have been if this none of this feud and violence and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think what sort of affected me was the fact that this was a man who was really good at what he does. Uh, Even though the thing that he does is like really gruesome and terrible, but he was good at it, and he suffered. Like he made one mistake, and he suffered for it. So yeah, I think that's what made me not sad exactly, but maybe a little unhappy at his death, I
yeah.
guess.
Well,
Yeah, because he even sort of remarks at it. He's just so, he was so focused, on trying to keep everyone else, safe from this, because what lies there dumped on him, that
Mhm.
he just got completely blindsided by the fact that it's like, yeah, none of what's happening is really targeting, you know, um, those people. They're a side effect of the real target, which is to overwork you,
Yeah.
so that you're just blindsided by it.
Yep.
yeah, and how many mistakes does LeSayer get to make? And he's not the one paying the price that this guy did. Uh, Even though this guy's competent, he makes one mistake and he's dead.
That's
um,
true.
but
Yeah, and,
He hasn't got magic.
yeah,
he hasn't
right.
got magic or an insane level of charisma
Yeah,
to where it's like, yeah, no, I'll he basically turns pretty much as we've seen, it's like he turns any setback around. He's like, oh well, I lost my most skilled commander. I'll twist that to make all and browbeat all these people into accepting my you know my commanders who were trained by him. So now I have this finely honed instrument who
Mm.
I
Oh
think
yeah,
even then they start to ride into Wearpoint at the harbor and everything, and some of that that bravado settles back in, and you know but then people are like, oh yeah, we absolutely can't stay here long because winter storms are about to start, and there's no way to feed all these people. We got to go soon. And Lysair is freaking out because he's like, I did not make all of this just to be stopped by bad weather. Unfortunately, he has a much bigger problem, coming, which is a giant, leopard made of shadow, bounding across the sky.
Yeah.
Yep. And meanwhile, we got Arathon down in, was that Kathleen? Down in Shan?
Kathleen of Shan, yes.
Yeah.
Earlian Tilian. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Tilian. I
And
don't know.
yeah, and he has to go through this big duel with this leader down there, and it's just like typical male ego stuff to prove martial worth in honor and all that, honor and all that stuff. And so that was sort of, yeah. And but he he shows his martial prowess against this guy. But allies were made. So that was I was wondering about that, because he travels down all the way down there, and then eventually he makes his way back. And he's using boats that he built, right?
He was traveling using his little sloop because he's down at Merior. I don't have the map pulled up right now, but yeah, and he knows the coastlines and everything, so he's got a pretty good, can make pretty good speed.
Right. Yeah. So that's just like an opposite of Lacey is having this big slog across the continent, and he's skipping around, all these different coastlines and stuff like that, visiting all these different places, from Merior to Shand, and then he eventually ends up back up to Wearpoint. And so it was interesting contrast there.
I think how did he put it in an earlier chapter? I think it's Arathan when he was meeting with Jirrit and Durkin. I think it's like Lysair can raise his army, he can outfit them, he can march them all over the continent, but it's gonna he's not gonna catch me.
Yeah.
It's like, and you eventually you're gonna run out of money. How to keep those people fed and paid, and
all things are there. I thought it was quite an interesting, I don't know if it's anti-war as the message, but this kind of ridiculousness of war, where Arathon spends like the last 2 chapters trying to stop people rallying to his cause, basically saying, please don't fight for me, I don't want more innocent blood in my hands. And yet everybody's like, no, we're there with you, with whether you want us there or not. It's like, but he's like, no, but let's not do that. He's desperate to save those people.
Yeah. Also, it's not. It's backing up a little bit before they head out to Wearpoint. But did we catch thoughts on how Lysair achieves the support of the brothers Ceridian and what he does there?
Oh, the support of
the brothers, the Ceridian brothers.
Oh yes, that's right.
Because Keldmar is sent to Atara to, evaluate what's going on there, and Keldmar is, listening to the whole speech, and it's like, yeah, no, this is a waste of my time. These, these people are dumb, and he's like, I'm not going to go on my way. And then Lysair is like, sends his people out, and they're like, no, we can't let you leave without accepting our hospitality. And Keldmar's like, that's really kind of violates, we don't answer to you, but goes along just, and then and then as we don't see the whole scene, but the way it's referred, Lysair, when Deacon's like, "Did you get him?" and Lysair is like, "If I survived the hangover," so basically got him drunk.
Yeah.
And told him a bunch of sob stories is my impression.
Yeah.
Because he's like, let me tell you, all about, all these things, because he remembers every single little slight that, Aerithon and, his forebears, delivered on Amaroth.
Hmm. He wins him over by saying, "Your army will be too small to defeat the Master of Shadow. Join us with our larger numbers, and we'll get him for sure." Right? I wonder if actually the right strategy for capturing the Shadow Master here is very small numbers and moving in utter secrecy, because Lysair made no secret of anything, which made it really easy for Arathon to attack and foil his plans. Um, so yeah, it all.
Yeah, that's basically where it ends up. It's like, oh, hey, look, your fleets, all anchored all out here, right in plain sight at this harbor, and there's no one on the boats.
Hmm.
What sure would be a shame if someone set fire to all of them.
But wasn't that wasn't Lysaea's fleet? Wasn't he trying to bargain to get those?
I mean,
boats,
there's a lot of
or-
conscripted ships and
Yeah,
hired ships
conscripted.
and
That's
everything,
right.
but they were all mostly just sitting there. There was no one on them. They were just all sitting there waiting to be loaded.
Yeah, those were
people
other
and
people's
whatnot.
ships, but he was kind of conscripting them
Yeah,
Mhm.
and trying to get them all, and
hired and conscripts and all
yeah,
that. Yeah,
and so I thought it was funny how, of course, Arathon's machinations there, using his control of shadow magic and illusion to brilliantly trick Lysair into destroying all that stuff, was great, because it's just a great contrast, because basically Lysair, he had this illusion that all this power and this his huge army and his power was going to be able to hunt down Arathon and destroy him once and for all, and that was just totally shattered by the events that happened in that harbor,
yeah.
put forth by Arathon's plans. And I loved that ending. I just thought it was a great, exciting ending that wrapped up the themes that these two characters are going at each other with these powerful illusions that they're telling themselves, basically, and that's manifested physically in Arathon's powers. And I love how this ended.
But isn't it also true that sort of Arathon sets the reader up in the same way, because he's been sort of telling the reader that he was going to build this fleet, that he was going to do all this thing, all this money was set aside, he was going to sell the jewels to fund the building of this fleet, even though it was kind of never the intention. He had to let everybody else around him think that, in terms of, if anybody was called or anybody was asked or described in anybody, they would say, yeah, this fleet's been built here or whatever. And even as we're reading it, we're kind of going, God, where did the fleet come from? Because there wasn't any time left. So the rug pulled out of the reader as well, which was quite nice.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because it's like, the fleet, but he has, I think, 3 to 4 ships, maybe.
That's right.
I'm like, I don't even. It's like I don't know that I'd call that a fleet, but I don't know how many you need for a fleet. It's like that's just a small group of ships. It's like.
Yeah, I think there was some detailing about how long it was taking to build just even a couple ships.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of. I suspect that Arathon knew that some people were going to find out about what he was doing, and that that they were going to report back to Lysair at some point. That's why I kind of say machinations, because he's very savvy about it. Just what Lysair fears.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, it's interesting. I didn't think of it like that. That the purpose of building the ships there was to make people believe when he eventually wrought ships out of shadow that they could have been completed, right? Because he did say that he needed 2 years to complete the
That's right.
fleet that he
Yeah.
was building at Merior, and it hasn't been 2 years since. I had one more question about that. Yeah. So maybe Chibipo, you say what you were going to say because I'm probably going to be starting a new topic.
It's kind of he does he does play on Lysair's you know he plays Lysair like a flute there basically. He's like, oh yeah, Lysair immediately is like, oh he's achieved his ships and he's got a whole army, the very thing coming down on top of me, and then it just turns out to be a bunch of broken down little ships that were just loaded with lots of flammable stuff.
Yeah, he really played on his fears there, right? And also they were in the shape of the pirate ships on Dasin Elor. So I guess Lysair has some fear associated with the sight of those ships as well that Arathon played upon.
No, there was that, yeah, and then you may not have seen this part because it might be in those pages that you haven't got through yet. But in typical at this point anyway, in typical Lysair fashion, after the fact, we see Lysair decide that everything that happened here, Arathon set it up and planned it years ago, and that entire little scene in the back alley in Atara was solely for the purpose of like, oh yeah, no, I'm just practice run with some little kids so that I can
That's right.
do this, and where he's like, everything is deceit, and it's like, oh my god.
All he has to do is talk to the twins' mother to know that that's not true.
Yeah. But also that it's still for Lysair consistent with Arathon's character. Even though he kind of gets it laid out to him that it's the curse, and Lysair isn't totally aware as aware of the curse as Arathon is, in terms of what it does to each of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that when the explanation comes through to Lysair, it's still consistent with Arathon of who he thinks Arathon is in this kind of skullduggery, and this kind of he's always one step ahead in his planning in the shadows, and is actually manipulating people and all this kind of stuff. It still kind of eats away at him in that way, which I think is very clever plotting and character work. Insofar as it's not like everything's wholly changed at the end. It's just changed ever so slightly for him. That he sees some of the motivations for what they were.
Yeah, it's like whatever it is, Lysair finds that way to be like, yeah, no, Arathon is a deceitful little, evil deceit all the way down.
Yeah.
And we also get a new quest, I guess, for Alara, where she is now she's now given the quest to retrieve the Waystone from the Fellowship.
That's right.
For Lorinda, yeah.
Yeah, and it was also from who's the head lady there?
Moriel.
Moriel, sends Lorinda because Lorinda.
Yeah, she sends her, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because Lorinda's like, oh noes, Arathon's been compromised.
Yeah, and she removes the permission for Alara to seduce him.
That's right.
No longer have to fool him.
You can't do that anymore. It's like,
very me too.
I don't need it. I don't need that now.
That's too bad.
The time is not right.
The Waystone that actually brings me to what I wanted to talk about earlier. I think in the previous set of chapters, when Lysair got information from the Koreani enchantress about what Arathon is up to, and we were told that Sethweir was looking away. He wasn't paying attention to that conversation. I thought that the consequence was that Lysair now knows about Arathon's whereabouts, and he's going to change the route that he takes to go try and defeat him, right? And so I thought that would make it so Arathon won't get to use the tactics that he had planned, because it probably doesn't have all his spies and clansmen planted along that route. But that's not what happened. So I think the purpose of telling us that Sethvir looked away was that he doesn't know that the enchantresses are after the Waystone now, and that maybe has major consequences for what might come, that the Fellowship doesn't know about it, is what I'm thinking, because the other potential outcome did not happen. So, yeah. What do you guys think?
That's interesting. The only bit that makes me doubt that, and that I actually think that would be a really nice, about turn insofar as the Sisterhood would have one up on the Fellowship. Except that isn't it kind of alluded to that the Fellowship always know what the Sisterhood's doing at all times by some way of, scrying or otherwise. But I think that would be really nice if those two would, the Fellowship's gaze was averted or taken off the ball by something else rather than being completely in control and master manipulators.
Yeah. Sethvir's been trying to trace back the events since then, apparently, but he still doesn't know what the root event was that caused all this movement among the enchantresses. Another thing that I wanted to bring up for discussion, I guess, is that we are told that the Prime Enchantress has some wards set to detect Fellowship presence, right? So if Luhain
yes.
or the other disembodied sorcerers in the room, they'd know. And we're also told that she doesn't actively prevent their appearance. She just wants to know what they're interested in, so she can then potentially manipulate their knowledge. So I'm wondering if when we had Luhain earlier, or I forget which one it was, but Luhain, I think, because the other one is out questing the other worlds. He gave Ilera her what you call it, her immortality-ish without the use of the crystals. I wonder if Muriel found out about it and did nothing.
She does not know.
Okay.
Whatever they did, Muriel, would have no clue. And the Fellowship's, kind of, understated that they're interested in keeping it that way.
Okay.
Because if they realize that, it's like the Fellowship are acting in favor of Ilera, maybe she's more important than, so by pretending it's like, oh, we don't care about her, or, so it's sort of keeping attention away from her by, not appearing to interact with her.
I see. Does the Fellowship know about Muriel's wards, do you think? Or if it's a spoiler, maybe don't want to know. But yeah, I'm curious about that interaction there. Who knows what about what the other is doing to prevent scrying?
I would think they would know just by the level of their power, and I have a feeling that's come up before somewhere, but I don't remember when.
It is, basically, she, I think, remarks, when she finds out about the Waystone that, at least since they've lost the Waystone, the Fellowship just intrudes and spies on her with impunity, and kind of implies that she doesn't really have, without the Waystone, she doesn't have any way to stop them. They're just gonna,
that's correct. Yeah.
Right.
They could just, do it, and the Waystone, at least gives her some form of parity as far as being able to counteract what they are attempting. As to what plans she has, spoilers.
Well, that's my interest is piqued about what Ilera's going to do next, and what so that definitely sets up more stuff to come.
But it is like she just turned up to kiss Arathon kind of set those wheels in motion, and then it's like, right, I'm out. You can chase me across the country now if that's the case, maybe.
Arathon wouldn't let her though.
Yeah,
Earlier.
yeah. Very hard to get. That's dating 101.
Don't kiss and scram.
My favorite bit, actually, of probably the entire book, was how the struggle between Jarrett and Arathon actually when the curse hit. The planning of that went into it, and then actually how Jarrett is actually struggling, with the fact that he's going to have to strike down his master in some way, or try and cause him pain or suffering to do that. That I think that whole sequence is so wonderfully written. I think it's absolutely fabulous. And actually, Jarrett's worried about repercussions, whereas obviously I think we know as the reader that he'll be fine. He has to be who he has to be at that stage for that to happen. But it's also a real embodiment of the curse, and how Arathon is really aware of what the curse is going to do to him, and actually what will happen to him at that stage, and the kind of lengths that he feels he has to go to in order to prevent anything really bad, massive loss of life, etc.
Yeah.
That was a very powerful scene, and it just shows the difference between him and Lysaea, because he is supposedly this master of shadow and subterfuge and what have you, but he's showing way more honor and chivalry than Lysaea, who plays up these aspects to the people he's bringing into his circle. And very powerful scene all around.
Yeah. The other reason I love that scene is because of how much it adds to Jarrett's character. We always get a lot of character development in quiet moments, but in the middle of an action scene, I'm thinking about just how wonderful Jarrett is. The fact that he accidentally reveals that the curse is affecting him too. I think it's the curse, right? Or was it the shoulder, the slash to the shoulder? I didn't figure out which it was. But whatever, some part of the pain that Arathon is feeling, Jarrett's feeling too. And then he's sort of like backing down from that and doing what needs to be done in the moment. And that whole interaction added so much to Jarrett's character for me. I absolutely loved it. I think if I was thinking about Jarrett this much afterwards, I was like, oh man, he's such a brilliantly written character. Just in the course of that really short scene, that was really brilliantly done for me.
Yeah, I think it's the bond that they have, the brotherly bond that he feels and channels that. And Arathon wasn't aware that actually would be a side effect of the curse and through their bond. So he was like, he was kind of taken aback by that, but you're right. It added another level of dramatic tension to the whole scene as he's battling himself and battling against that pain and the overwhelming nature of the curse on the two men.
Yeah. If he's feeling the curse too, he's probably feeling inclined to let Arathon have at it, but he's stopping him. So, he's probably enforcing as much will as Arathon, if not more, in that moment, right?
Yeah.
So, that scene is brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, very, very good point.
I do also, want to say that, since we kind of saw him there at the climax and curse, but overwhelmed by the curse, Arathon is kind of scary.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's just because Lysaea was in front of him there, so he didn't really have much, eyes for anything but Lysaea. But here, Lysaea isn't, and the curse has overrun him, and just the way he responds to, possible obstructions that get between him and Lysaea, where he's just Jarrett's like, that guy will slit your throat, and Arathon's just like, yeah, no, because I will flay the flesh off his bones with shadows. And I'm like, whoa, okay.
But just interestingly, because we see, as Jared quite said, Arathon is the chivalrous character for most of the time, but actually in those scenes he is very much possessed, and definitely a danger to both him and everybody else around him if he doesn't get restrained or controlled in some way.
Yeah, he found that out the hard way at the end of Curse.
Mm.
The mystery. But it shows his growth as a character that he had him chained down, and for this other conclusion, for this battle that we had at the end of this ships. So it's that's a great show of character growth, and it was very, very well done.
Yeah. Yep.
It's so funny because I was kind of thinking we'd have a chat today, and there's 2 chapters to talk about. Maybe we'll go for about 20 minutes. Once we talk about a couple of the main scenes, what would we be left with?
Oh yeah, well, like Chibi Post said, there's a lot going on.
There is. I haven't even got to the spoiler part that Varsha doesn't know about, which I kind of feel like we should make something up.
Like, I know where to find you on the Patreon.
So you just maybe you don't read it, and through somewhere down the line you kind of go, "That's not what they said happened."
So
how about Moriel showing up there at the end and tap dancing with Erethan?
That would have been better if Moriel turned up and seduced Arathorn at the end. That would have been so good.
Speaking of, was it implied that Lirinda is sort of in love with Arathorn, or at least somewhat infatuated by him? Did I interpret that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Who's she again? Remind me.
The initial scrying where she spied on them back in Curse, and she had to use the template from Alara to as the key. So she sort of immersed herself in that template, and she, I guess, wasn't quite able to clear out all the bits and bobbles of Alara's feelings towards Erethan, and they and she sort of developed her own separate fascination with him. Yeah. And it's she's probably self-denial, but Moriel's like, oh yeah, this is not good. This kind of endangers her role that I have envisioned for her to be my replacement. Yeah, we don't like that. We got to fix that.
Yeah.
So she's I guess the hint, if that's what it was that she's unhappy when she realizes that Lysair found out about Arathorn's whereabouts and what he's doing at Merior, right? But then I wasn't sure if I was reading that correctly, but you're right. In Curse we are told that she has some leftovers from the scrying that she has to deal with. There was one other thing. Oh yeah. So before we move on to the bit that you're going to make up, both the times that Arathorn weaves shadow in the city in Rathlin, Etara, is it, where he's about to be crowned, and then again here at the bay at Bear Point, he weaves shadow really quickly, and it's very powerful because he sort of engulfs the whole city in darkness each time, and then Lysair sort of takes forever to retaliate or clean up the shadow, right? And Etara, we see he spends hours and hours trying to remove the shadow and is still only barely successful at it. So I was wondering if shadow is inherently more powerful, or is it just that Lysair has not mastered light as well as Arathorn has?
Good question.
I think it's a bit of that. Is Erethan, having the mage training and whatnot, has a much basically he has years and years of training in how to use this, whereas even as Curse, we admitted Lysair never got any training for it, so he just sort of struggled along, and as best I could tell, I mean, he really hasn't evolved beyond throw beams of light at things.
Mm. Okay. He can't
Yeah.
weave light the
See,
way
you know, it's like
Arizona
as we see with Earthen, Earthen can do a whole bunch of other things with his shadows.
can. Mhm.
You know, completely use them to, you know, reshape how he looks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think he can apply any physical weight to them, but um, you know, he can make his, you know, so he's still got to work with his own build, but he can, you know, change his skin color, you know, his hair color, eye color, all of that. And I just presume Lysair could probably do something similar because, you know, that's just manipulation of light.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
but all
struck me.
we've seen from him is blast, blast, blast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it struck me a few times that was exactly the case. You know, there's a more kind of sophisticated use of magic by Arathorn. Arathorn, you know, rather than Lysair. Even given that Arathorn is missing his mage sight and you know compromising in probably more ways than we realize at this stage, about what he can do. So yeah, but it always makes for a cool MacGuffin, if you know what I mean, at the end. Whereas we kind of know what Lysair is going to do, and Arathorn is like the surprise, is the rabbit in the hat kind of thing to say what you think you saw, you did not see, you know.
Mhm. Yeah. There's also the distance aspect of his magic, like to make it look like there are so many ships coming to attack. It has to be woven at a great distance, or maybe you can just do something with illusion on a short distance that makes it look like it's coming from far away. I don't know, but if he's able to weave a magic that far off, it's also incredibly powerful. I guess the the point I'm trying to get to is that all of the magic that we've seen the fellowship weave so far, it takes time, right? It's a lot of patience and a lot of detailed intricate work, but Lysair and Arathon's magic is instantaneous and immediate. I wonder if it's got something to do with the elemental nature of their powers. I think in the first book, the fellowship was bemoaning the fact that they gave elemental powers to Lysair and Arathon, right? That they bred that inherently. So maybe that's what's making this more powerful, or like basically, I'm curious about what makes their magic different from the Fellowship's magic.
That's a good question.
That was a very good question.
I gotta write these down so we can ask Johnny.
Yeah. It does kind of tie back to it's just, you know, inborn direct control over, you know, that particular element. You know, and light and shadow in this case. So, you know, whereas, you know, but the important thing is, you know, when he's talking about that and he explains that to Alara, and she's like, is that even possible? And he's just sort of like, what is possible does not always you know, coincide with what is wise.
Yeah.
And so the implication there is, and that's the important thing is, I don't think it's anything that they couldn't do themselves as the sorcerers if they chose to. You know, they just don't because they don't need. Well, probably because they don't need to. But
yeah, part of their pogrom, I guess, is to prevent destruction. So maybe that includes sorcery on their part, so that they wouldn't use that kind of power that Arathon and Lysair have now.
Yeah. And there's no need for them to be imaginative with their magic use, because they're very, very much trying to keep a status quo of some sort, you know, in the world, and an equilibrium in the world, rather than kind of trying to, like you say, influence it kind of over the top, you know.
yeah, it's kind of a case of it's like, well, yeah, we could do this, but why would we? What, you know, well, we've got so many other tools. You know, why would we do this? You know, I'm sure maybe if something came up, they're like, okay, I really need to use, you know, manipulate shadow to do this now. But otherwise, I think it's like, yeah, it's like it's a tool in a toolbox, but you know, they have so many that, you know, it's not one that they ever, you know, really need to make use of.
Makes sense.
With Lysair and Arathon, that's that's what they got. That's what they use.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if we're gonna make up this last chapter, this last
Yeah.
segment of this last chapter,
So
who wants to
other
go
than
first?
Warrior tap dancing fiercely, what else happened?
Well, I say it took a long walk off a short pier.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Things that would have been cool that didn't happen would have included the appearing of their mother. That would have been pretty shocking and surprising. Did not happen. No, what did happen? It seems sort of anticlimactic now, I think, but I kind of really like it. Is that word is brought to Lysair of actually what happened, and Arathon's thought process, and actually how he tried to limit the loss of life, and how if he had been all hand and destruction and all the rest of it would have been this way. And actually, what's nice about that is that Lysair kind of takes it and ruminates sort of, everybody else is around him saying, no, this is just him manipulating again. And Lysair's like, no, it's not just that. Actually, there is something maybe in this. And maybe he becomes slightly more aware of what the curse is and how it affects him and actually his thought process, because he's already spoiling from the fact that he was outmaneuvered again. You know, he arrived with this big force. And he's like, oh, he's always one step ahead of me. Is he just better than me, quicker than me? All the rest of it. Whereas I think, you know, part of that is true, but I think part of it is also Arathon knows what he's fighting against internally, you know, and he's been able to plan for that and do that, and that's kind of. But I think that's about the last 10 chat pages for the encapsulated there. That's what I took from it anyway.
Yeah, wasn't it the merchant who was?
Yes,
saying,
it was. Yeah.
He didn't hurt us. He didn't kill us. He specifically saved. You know, spared us.
But except Lysair said for him to be spared. And of course, the people or Lysair's people killed him anyway.
Right.
Yeah, which was
that was an interesting, carry from the beginning of chapter 13 to the end there at 14, because early in 13, Deegan is desperately thinking, he's like, someone needs to knock Lysair down a peg, to something, where he's not like surrounded by people, knock his charisma down a peg, and he's just like, so that he actually seems, human. And, he's like, he needs some kind of crack in this facade. And then when he gets it, he's absolutely like, oh, I didn't want this. And
yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Somebody else did the dirty deed.
Yeah, and then Deegan's like, "Yep, well, I can't let him, because Deegan knows, about the curse, because, and whatnot, and he's just like, yeah, no, I can't let a word of that get out, because as we've seen, it's more convenient for Deegan and his own, beliefs to, make sure that's buried." And
yep. So that was it.
So
Nice.
I don't know if you're disappointed now.
And then Davian comes flying in on a lightning bolt, and
yes, of course.
I'm gonna go finish the last 10 pages immediately after this, and then be mad at anyone who gave me wrong information.
There we go.
I'm in the clear. There we go.
One thing I can say, there was definitely not a sophomore slump with this novel.
Yeah, for sure. But very much
its own thing.
Yeah. I was going to say not like Curse of Mystery Part 2. It was not that. It had definitely had a different tone and a different feel to it, and like different themes and even approach to the character work and stuff like that. I thought that was very interesting as a second book.
I think that's what makes it stand out as a great book.
And I wonder how you'll feel once you get through Warhost, since as depending on where you have a copy, this is just this, as the way she writes, this is basically the 2/3 of the way climax, and the and then the stuff in Warhost will be the the sort of slow down followed by the next big climax.
The next arc.
Yeah. Looking
Very
forward.
much looking forward to it as usual. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we haven't lost anybody
You mean like in
in
the
readers
book?
in our little group, if you know what I mean. You know, nobody's kind of got to the end of the second book and went, oh, it just didn't stick for me, or you know, it didn't. You
Mm,
know, I was disappointed with how that ended up. You know, which is
mm,
cool.
Yeah, I've not seen any disappointment anyway.
Yeah.
Any disappointment? I know I guess he's been busy and all. I don't know where Steve's at with him since we haven't had him for the last couple. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve's taking a break, preparing for a long bike ride. As far as I could tell. Better man than me.
I think we'll have him back for the next book. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
What was I going to say? Yeah, I was wondering, since we're sort of at the end of the book, what overall thoughts you had about the book as a whole, any changes in character perceptions, what I guess we did talk about that a little bit, but were there any other high level book level thoughts that we should talk about?
I was very much at the end of Curse Mystery with Burn Lysair, you know, just doom. And I think this is the book. I think you talked about this to people when you went back and read Curse, that you softened in Lysair at that stage. And I'm at the softening of Lysair by the end of this book, because I think he sort of realizes that he doesn't know enough to really be sure of what he knows anymore. And I think that's an interesting narrative to take through into the rest of the series.
Yeah. We keep sort of, I don't know if you all do the same, but I keep thinking back to the prologue where we are told that the Lord of the Light is, I think, 500 years later, or wherever the prologue is set. The impression is that Lysair was the good guy and Arathon is sort of the bad guy, and we're seeing many examples of that, I think. So Arathon is doing everything he can to stop a war, but he is inducing a lot of fear in people. But Lysair is more overtly pulling people to war, which apparently is not considered a bad thing to do. They are fighting for a righteous and justified cause. So there is no reason to think him evil or hate him from the point of view of the people he's leading, right? So you can sort of see where that impression is coming from. I don't know if it'll change over the course of the next 8 books. I'd be surprised if it doesn't. But so far we're sort of like in line with what the prologue tells us happened.
That's a good point, Vasha. And we're seeing, and like Chris said, we're seeing a lot of character growth as well. So that line at the beginning of that prologue, as simple as a line as it is, becomes more complex the more we read these books, and that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
I wonder what everyone's thoughts will be, because it's Warhorse being the second half, or the final third of this, however you want to.
The arc,
will be, and to what you'll think of how Lysair responds to the sequence of events that start here with the burning of the fleet, and then what's following to come up. So
that's what we're here to find out.
Yeah, indeed.
Can't wait.
This is cool. There's an hour. We made an hour. I cannot believe 2 chapters we made an hour and made it easily. That's
yeah, it is pretty cool. It is a set of chapters that a lot happens. It is the culmination of many events. I guess the other thing is, even though this was supposed to be sort of the middle of a book, middle-ish of a book, it didn't feel like that. That ending was pretty satisfying, no? It didn't feel undone or partially done or anything like that for having been cut down at 2/3. Yeah. Cool. Is there anything else before we do outro? Sorry about the noise.
No, I'm happy and eager to chat about it again next week, isn't it? Or is it 2 weeks away?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. It is 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Looking forward to it.
Cool.
We'll have Jenny here next time.
Yes, Jenny will be here. Jenny Watts will join us. Next time it will be a live stream, so bring your questions. And if you'd like to join the stream, the event is posted on the Page Chewing forum, so you can RSVP to get notifications about the StreamYard links and such. Yeah, I think that's about it. Chivipo, would you like to outro us?
Of course. And look, this time I'm awake for it.
I was gonna say.
Sleep, and it's like nothing was boring. It had nothing, great conversation. There was so much stuff that week. I was just anyway. I am Chibipo. Again, I can be found on Twitter and Chibipo1. Usually, just commenting or retweeting people's stuff and updates, but and also on Page Chewing, and yeah, those are the places I can be found.
My next, okay. Jared, I'm on the Fantasy Thinker on YouTube. I did do a review of this book on there, so you can go check that out under reviews, as well as talk about some of the prose that's in this book. So you can check me out there. I'm also on the Page Chewing forum as well.
Cool. My name's Chris Mullen. I have my own YouTube channel where I talk about books and movies, and also on the Page Chewing forums as well. Trying to see what everybody else is doing and see if I can stop being distracted by what other cool things people are reading and talking about. Yeah. It's very hard.
It's a great forum.
It is.
So if you'd like to join us for this read along or any others, the planning's all happening on the Page Chewing forum. I'll post links in the description. Do come check us out and hang out there with us. And as for my channel, the About page has information on how to reach me directly in case you would want to, but I also spend a lot of time on the Page Chewing forum. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you in 2 weeks with Johnny Wirtz on Sunday, July 9th at 1 p.m. Pacific time. Bye.
Take care.